I have been asked for an updated 4.1.1 version of this keybind guide, so we're going to go over this with a bit more detail than usual. I will make sure that everything is chaptered so that you can reference it or go to wherever you need. But I'm going to consider this to be the ultimate keybind guide for this year, as we will be covering absolutely everything that is important. Unless there are any major changes, this guide should work for the entirety of 2025. Let's begin. Starting off, we have cinematic camera, vibration, and camera spring movement. These are all pretty much just for recording. I don't use any of these, but I want to show you what they actually do. By default, when you're third person, you get a little bit of a bounce when you're moving your ship. If you turn off cinematic camera and camera spring movement, the bounce is gone. Since that's not really important to me, I turn off cinematic cameras, vibration, and camera spring movement. Show hints and control hints. These are pretty good if you're a new player. I recommend leaving them on for a little bit, but since I'm not new, I always turn these off. Ship entry labels. These are labels for how you enter the ship or where you enter the ship. So for example, in this ship, you'll see the canopy whenever you're close to it. It's just how you get in a ship. I think they're distracting, so I personally turn them off because I know where everything is on a ship, but if you're new, this may help you. And here's what it looks like whenever you have the ship entry labels turned off. It's a lot cleaner and nicer, so I do recommend turning these off. These are all of your FPS commands. They're pretty self-explanatory. The only thing that I personally use is the aim down sights toggle. I do set this to yes. Not a lot of people like this. They prefer to hold right click in order to aim, but I don't. So now if I just tap right click, it holds it for me, and I tap it again, and I release it. Very subjective. You do whatever you are more familiar with. A lot of this other stuff down here I just do not touch. There's really no reason to. Scrolling down, we find this section of the game settings. These are probably the most important of the settings. These are all of your IFCS controls. They're how your ship displays certain information or performs in certain ways. A lot of these we're actually going to turn off, but I'm going to show you what they are and why we do that. So the first one is default flight automatic slowdown on. This is set to yes by default. What this does is whenever you're flying and you pull out your landing gear and deploy it, your ship is actually going to move slower. So this should in theory help you with your landing, and it does to a degree. Since this is entirely subjective, I'm going to leave this one up to you, but I personally do set this to no and disable it. The next is default flight decoupled on. By default, this is yes. So when you're flying in Star Citizen and you are in space, 0G, if you hold, for example, forward thrust, you're going to keep going, and then if you remove your finger from it, you're going to naturally slow down. The reason why you're slowing down is because coupling will use the thrusters on the ship to actually slow you down. So we're going to watch it from this angle here. So now we're holding down forward thrust, we're going forward, and now we're going to release it again. The thrusters change, and it slows the ship down for us, kind of acting like a brake, simulating whatever, maybe space, I don't know. But either way, it's going to bring you to a halt. If you prefer to fly like this, by all means go ahead. It does have some advantages. If you fly decoupled, we're going to disable coupling right now, so we have disabled it, and the default keybind to disable coupling is simply C as in Charlie. We're going to go forward, and now we're removing our finger from thrust, and now we're coasting. You can see now the thrusters don't care. I'm controlling these. It just doesn't matter what I do. I keep my momentum. It doesn't matter what way I'm facing. It doesn't matter what way I turn or roll. We keep carrying on in the same direction until I give it an input to do otherwise. This one, once again, is up to you. I will normally fly decoupled, but if you're new or prefer coupled, there's really nothing wrong with flying coupled either. So, you now know what it is, you make the decision. But for me, I turn it off. Default flight ESP on. This, in general, you probably want to leave on. ESP stands for Enhanced Stick Precision. It is not auto-aim. It is nothing like that. ESP will naturally slow down the input and dampen the input on that stick, whether it is real or virtual. In theory, making it easier to stick to a target's pip. The best way that I can demonstrate this is to use this target here. ESP, every time I get around the shooting pip mark and I'm on that pip, It's going to dampen my inputs in order to try and help me stay on the target or stay on the pip. In theory, it's making your aiming better and enhancing your precision. Hence the name Enhanced Stick Precision. So I would absolutely leave your ESP set to yes. Default flight gravity compensation on. Gravity compensation is something that will attempt to keep your ship afloat without additional user input when in atmosphere. Otherwise, you're going to come to a free fall. So by default, we have gravity compensation on. We're not falling. The ship is keeping us afloat. However, the moment we disable it, notice how we are now dropping down to the planet. For me, personally, I will turn gravity compensation off. I like having more control over my ship, and I do not like the performance hit that I get by having it enabled. For me, the safety is just not worth it. If you don't want to hit the ground, just occasionally up thrust or whatever. Treat it like an airplane in any other game. Defaults, flight, G-Safe on. This is very important. G-Safe is a safety mechanism that is designed to keep you from pulling too many Gs and blacking out. And the way it does that is by limiting the amount of Gs that you can pull, hence cutting down on the performance of your ship. So with G-Safe on, we're going to try and pull some hard Gs here, see how much we can get to. So we're going to the right strafe, and we are able to get about 4.5 Gs before it cuts us off. We're going to do the same thing, and we're getting 8.6 Gs, so we're getting almost double. Since that is a massive performance limiter, always turn your G-Safe off. Set this default down to no. If you're having a problem passing out, simply fly a little bit better, not as hard, or do maneuvers to counteract passing out. For example here, if I'm going to the right and I'm starting to pass out, just go to the left. Now we're going to the left, it's going to stabilize your Gs, and it's going to bring you back to reality and stop you from blacking out. So you're always going to want to kind of stabilize it and go in the opposite, simulating the blood going to your head or whatever. Default flight boost disables G-Safe. This is redundant since we have G-Safe turned off. Default flight cruise mode on. Leave this to no. I don't even think it works right now in the game, so don't even bother with it. Default flight space brake enables boost. By default, this is set to yes. So whenever you're flying and you use your space brake, which is the default key of X, it's going to consume your boost to slow you down. So you're going to slow down faster, but you're going to use your resource to do it. Since the space brake works well enough as it is without the boost, and because your boost is a very important resource in a fight, I always set this to no. You could always just boost and brake at the same time though, so you don't really need to set the yes. Defaults flight speed limiter on. By default this is yes, and here's what it does. Whenever you're going into nav mode, so let's say we're in SCM right now, and we're going into nav. When you swap over, your speed will remain capped at SCM speed until you manually move it up using your scroll wheel. This will get you killed if you're trying to run away from somebody. Since this is an extra unnecessary step in order to reach maximum speed, we will be turning the speed limiter off. You do not want this on. Defaults flight proximity assist on. Leave this to no. What proximity assist does is when you're close to a target and if you have it enabled, it will attempt to slow you down to prevent you from colliding with the target. Again, taking control away from you and impeding your performance. So we've just enabled it right now, and it's kind of pushing us away from this object as you get closer. It's very hard to stay close to something or just maneuver. Either way, it's off by default for a reason. Leave it off. Defaults HUD, advanced HUD on in ECM, nav, and prefers labels. These three right here, you want these on. The advanced HUD is so good. This is the default HUD. Everything's kind of like lower left, lower right. It's not very good. It looks awful and the information is just not there. But if we enable it, look how much better this is. You want all of these enabled. All the information you need is right here in front of you. So we are going to set all three of these to yes. And then defaults HUD course prediction on, leave this set to yes. Defaults lights enabled, no, you don't want your lights on all the time. If you want to turn your lights on, you press L Lima by default. This is also pretty important. We're going to go down to pilot ESP strength and dampening curvature. This is how strong your enhanced stick precision is. By default, they are both set to 1. If you are on mouse and keyboard, I strongly recommend that you leave the ESP strength at 1.0 and you drop the curvature down to 0. The reason why you want to do this is it gives you the most precise control and subtle dampening that you need to stay on target without being so overbearing that it's hard to perhaps pull away when you have to. But there is something to be said about perhaps tweaking this to your own personal preference. If, for example, you are constantly overshooting your target and you're not keeping your nose on the pip, you would move this higher. So you will have to experiment with this. This is not something that I can give you a hardball answer on, but for me personally, I find that 0 is the best for me. It gives me just enough precision without limiting my mobility or my ability to switch targets. Pilot VJoy range yaw degrees and range pitch degrees. That's what these tails are. I call them a tail here. And this is simulating the joystick, and it's showing you how much it's being pulled. This does not impact your sensitivity at all anymore. Not at all. It does not make it snappier. It does not change anything. At this point, it is purely cosmetic. You can honestly leave this alone at 19, or you can drop it. Pilot VJoy mouse dead zone % of range. This is just a dead zone. It's how much forgiveness you have or how much you have to move your mouse to overcome the dead zone in order to get input. Some people will play at 0. Others will play around 20 or even 1. This is something that you're going to have to experiment with on your own. I personally play with 0. I do not like dead zone on my mouse. However, if you find that you are overshooting your targets or you're having a hard time keeping your nose on something and it's not your ESP dampening curvature, you may want to add a little bit of dead zone. Not too much. Experiment with this and see how it feels. But again, I put mine on 0. Pilot velocity indicator. By default, this is set to fading. You always want to set this to always on. The velocity indicator is that little thing right here. That's your velocity indicator. That's telling you where you're going. It's a very useful tool. You want to always be able to see that. So now I know this is where my ship will end up at. No matter where I turn, no matter how I move, as long as I don't add a thrust input, I will arrive at that destination right there. The moment I start shifting to the left and to the right and up and down, that is the trajectory of my ship. And since it's useful, leave it on. These are the driver and turret VJoy settings. I do not use VJoy for driving, so I don't touch these. However, I do turn the dead zone down for my turret gunning. Going down to turret ESP strength and curvature, I do the same thing, and I drop my ESP curvature down to 0. That way, it's a lot more, for me anyway, controllable. We do not change our adaptive zoom sensitivity for the turret either. We leave that alone. I don't touch any of this salvage stuff. I don't touch any of this mining stuff. I leave it alone. Now we are in the gunnery section of the game settings. Default weapons magnified UI on. This is going to be the pip and how big the pip is. So by default, this is how big the pip is. It's going to look bigger or smaller depending on your resolution and monitor. But the way the pip works is so long as it's green, the gimbals are going to attempt to hit their target. So if we fire from here, you can see how the weapons are correcting to try and hit the ship, even though I'm not really aiming at it. You can magnify the pips here and make it bigger if you want to see more. So these are what the pips look like when they're magnified. The results are the same. Having a bigger pip or a smaller pip does not appear to make you any more or any less accurate. It's simply a matter of preference. And since it is a matter of preference, with the magnification, you decide what you want to do. I personally leave mine to no, because with my new monitor, it just looks kind of goofy covering up the entire ship. Default weapons precision lines on. By default, this is set to no. I will always set this to yes. We're now looking at the pips again. We see how it's a pip. That's it. Nothing special, right? Once we enable the precision lines, we got a bit more visibility here. It looks a bit better, easier to see, and it gives us some more information. Don't read too much into the lines. I just have it on because it looks a lot better and it makes it easier to spot and hit targets. Default weapons, Stagger Fire on. By default, this is no. Leave this on no. Stagger Fire in general is very bad. It slows down your DPS. It's not worth using at all. Defaults, weapon, lag pips on. By default, you have a lead pip. I prefer the lead pip. Some people prefer the lag pip. I'm going to show you what the difference is. And then later in the video, I'm going to give you a keybind to hot swap between lag and lead, because actually sometimes you do actually want a lag pip. It can be dynamic or situational. If we're moving, the pip is deflecting from the target, and you can see how it's not really stuck on it. If we enable lag, the pip stays wherever my nose is going or where my shots are going to be. It's a matter of preference, but honestly, you get a lot of information about your opponent's movements from using the lead pips that I strongly recommend the lead pips. But if you do prefer this over lead, by all means use it. It's up to you. Default weapons use individual pips. Leave this to no. It doesn't work really very well when you put it on yes anyway. But if you're using weapons with different velocities, which you should not be doing because of how this game actually plays, it would display a pip with the slower weapon ahead of the faster weapon. Default weapons fading pips on. You want to set this to no. You always want to be able to see the pips. So when we're close to a target or we're nose onto it, the pip just goes away. I don't know why this is useful to somebody or why somebody might think this is useful. And it only comes back when we start moving or we're not neutral anymore. So if we have it set to always be on, we see the pip no matter what. And you always want to see that pip. You don't want it to be going away. So fading pips on, make this no. Always make this no. The rest down here I don't really touch, so I keep scrolling down. I scroll down until I get to Vehicles Targeting Enable Auto Zoom on Locked Target. By default this is yes. We are going to want to turn this off. But let me show you what it is. Whenever you lock onto a target, your character will slowly start zooming in on it. This is bizarre. And some people get a little bit dizzy when this happens. It's distracting, and it's just not good. We don't need to zoom in or have our character RP zoom in. And then if you detarget it, your head just whips back, apparently. Because of that, we are going to disable auto zoom on locked target. And since we have disabled it, we don't have to really worry about this slider, so we're going to continue going down. Next is pilot look ahead enabled. Very similar, also very annoying. I will also be turning this off. When you're flying, your character will begin to just look ahead, like lean forward in his seat. And you'll see when it slows down, it kind of stops. It just shifts with the ship. Very cinematic, very cool, all that garbage. Fun for a single player game, maybe. Either way, I hate it, so we're going to turn it off. I do not know why there are two of them, but we are going to disable both of them. And because we've done that, everything down here is redundant, so you should not have to worry about the sliders. Next, we have Pilot Driver Turret Automatically Enable Target Padlock. This is a really weird setting. It does not work as you would imagine it to work. It's supposed to mimic head tracking. It's very bad, and it's all for a reason. However, if you were to enable it, the character's head will try to move with the target. Let me demonstrate. I currently have this target selected, and I have Padlock enabled. And so long as I have it targeted, the character's head will try to keep an eye on it. This is sadly not a substitute for head tracking, because unlike head tracking, if you pull too far ahead, you will not naturally adjust to try and find it. You will just snap over to the front and lose your target again, until you bring it back into visual. It's a good idea, but it's just not powerful enough, and it's not worth using. You, however, may like it, and you may want to use it. However, if you want to use it, you're going to have to scroll all the way back up to Pilot Look Ahead and re-enable it. Since I have head tracking, I'm going to keep it disabled. And even if I did not have head tracking, I would not use it because it sucks. So I would recommend disabling it and leaving it off, but if it's something that you want to try, go ahead by all means. G-Force Induced Head Movement, Afterburn, Global Camber Shake, Vehicle Weapon, Recoil Scale, all this stuff is cinematic garbage. So if we're flying around, you can see the shake going on here. We're going to afterburn, it's going to shake some more. Then we're going to shoot our weapons, and it's going to shake. Look at that, it's shaking. Wow, this is so cool. You know, Squadron 42, heck yeah, recoil. It all sucks. It's all distracting. It's all a waste of your time, and it just makes you bad. Turn all of this off. And the rest down here is just not very important. I don't really mess with it or touch it. You could probably figure this out on your own because it's not worth talking about. The next tab is the graphics tab. This is completely and totally subjective based upon your system and what you like graphically, what you like for field of view, what you like for everything else. There's nothing in here that I can tell you that's going to help you or make you better. You just have to mess with this on your own. Do what works best for you. Audio tab, same thing, not much to talk about here. The only thing I will change here, actually, I will scroll down to audio-driven camera shake strength, and I will put this down to 0 because I do not need camera shake or anything like that impeding how I play the game. We have now arrived at the controls tab. This tab, much like the graphics and the audio tab, very highly subjective, but I do want to touch on mouse sensitivity. Mouse sensitivity in Star Citizen is very important. It determines the input that you give to the virtual joystick. So, because of that, you're going to have to find what works for you based on what your Windows or mouse software DPI settings are. 34, for example, is generally too high if you have a very high DPI. I have had great success with other players who have studied and tweaked their mouse sensitivity based on what they're doing or what feels best for them. I cannot give you an answer here as to what is the best. I will, however, say that in general, the lower the sensitivity, the more controllable and precise something is. That fits my style and my movement. So, I play, for example, on 800 DPI for my mouse settings, and I lower my sensitivity down to 4. That works for me on foot, and that works for me in a ship. I do, however, occasionally experiment and try other DPIs and other sensitivities. So what I'm saying here is you do have to do research on your sensitivity and your DPI. It is that important. There are plenty of resources online that you can find that will help you set that up or get a better understanding. This is not the video for that, and quite frankly, I am not the expert on that subject. I will also move my ADS sensitivity up to 100 because I like having a 1-to-1 ratio. Some people like the mouse to be a lot slower when they're ADSing versus when they're not. Not me. I like a 1-to-1 ratio. So these are my mouse settings at 800 DPI. You can try them, but you're going to have to figure out what works best for you. Next, we're going to go to key bindings. We're going to go to advanced controls and customization. We are going to be setting up a lot of stuff here. The first section I'm going to go to is vehicles and cockpit, and I'm going to make a key that will open and close all doors. I will typically make my open key semicolon and my close key apostrophe. The reason why I do not use the open and close doors toggle is that the toggle is not very granular. So if you have one door open and another close and you toggle, one of those is going to open and one is going to close. So you're not going to effectively close all your doors. But here it is in action. Here's our cutlass. We're going to press the button to open all the doors. You can see they all open up. And then we're going to press the button to close all the doors, and they begin to close. I do not touch anything else under the vehicle's cockpit section. Next, I go down to flight movement, and then I scroll down to cycle, mouse mode, VJoy, and relative. I will set this to caps lock because it is a free key. You can set this to whatever you want, as with any keybind. I will not really use this for anything other than bringing my nose to a halt or making fine-tuned adjustments if I'm landing or trying to do something fancy. So by default, you see here we have the VJoy, and it's very floaty because it's simulating a joystick. If we make it relative, it's a lot more precise. But you can't really fly and dogfight like this. You're not really meant to. So what I like to use it for is, say I'm trying to shoot somebody on the ground over there and he's standing at the 0. I could just shoot around like this. It's a lot more precise. Whereas if I was using VJoy, it's a lot floatier and harder to do. So this makes relative mode pretty good for something like that. But let's go ahead and say you want to do something fancy, like maybe you want to just put the ramp down on a landing pad, or you want to load some cargo into your ship from 0G. Whatever it may be, use your imagination. We would open the doors, we activate the relative mode, and we start to drop our ship, and then we just go ahead and use that relative mode to make very fine-tuned adjustments. So now we've very gently touched the ramp down on the pad without touching the ship up. If you try to do this with your VJoy, it's going to be very weird and floaty like this. It's like bouncing all over. It's really bad. But if you're doing it with relative, look how fine that control is. But yeah, do not use this for dogfighting or anything crazy like that. It's really bad. The next one I'm going to scroll down to is vehicles weapons. I'm then going to go down and look for toggle, lead, and lag pips. And I'm going to set this to right control. Now let's say I'm go ahead and I'm fighting this Polaris. We've got a lead pip here. I find these to be not very useful for shooting big ships like this. So I like to actually swap over on the fly to my lag pip. And I hit the control key there. You saw how it swapped. And now this lets me just make better hits with more precision on the target. It's way better. If I swapped over to lead, this is just not very good. This is not very good for attacking big ships personally. So I swap back to lag, and now I'm able to hit those shots right onto the hangar with very little effort. I'm even able to aim at the engines here. Again, very little effort. This is super nice. So if you're attacking a big target, you certainly do want to swap between your lag and your lead pip. It's very helpful. And then I don't touch anything else in here at all. I then go down to vehicles, shields, and countermeasures. If you are a mouse and keyboard or just using a mouse, this might actually be probably the most important keybind to save your life. By default, if you want to launch a decoy, you have to press H, that's hotel. That's very far away, it's not very useful. If you have a decent mouse that has buttons on the side, which most do, you can bind these to the buttons. So what I will do is I will bind my decoy to my mouse button 4, which is on the side, and I will bind my noise to my mouse button 5, which is also on the side. I will then go ahead and I will rebind right alt plus H to right alt plus button 4. What this is going to do is allow me to increase the amount of decoys I launch whenever I activate this. So, but just check this out. So, by default, if something pops on me here, I just hit button 4, pop one flare out. There you go. I keep hitting button 4, and a flare comes out every time I press it. If I'm feeling like I'm in trouble or there's somebody with missiles around, I can go here. You see decoys. It has the little number 1 next to the 44. If I hold right alt plus my mouse button 4, you can now see that I've increased it by 2. So now when I press the button, 2 will come out at once. If for whatever reason I would want to decrease the amount of decoys that come out down from 2 to 1, I would go back to the binds. I go to the decoy decrease burst size. I left click alt. Same thing. Well, now we're back in the game. You can see I still have 2 to launch. You can see that on the right side. So if I press left alt plus mouse 4 again, you can see it's down to 1. If I want to hit noise, I just hit mouse 5, and it just shoots all that noise out. Huzzah. While we're here, the next thing I will do is I will adjust my shield raising levels. By default, these are all unbound. So I will go to my numpad if I have a numpad. So if you don't have a numpad, this is not going to help you. So I'll go to shield raise level front. I will make that 8. Shield raise level back, 2. Shield raise level left, 4. Shield raise level right, 6. Shield reset levels, 5. If you're in a big ship, you can see here that you can change the power to the shields. So we're going to give the Corsair here some more to the front. So I press 8 on my numpad. You can see there that it pulls from the left, the right, and the rear, and it puts it to the front. I can just keep doing this as much as I want. I can adjust it to go to the right. It'll pull from the front to go to the right. Or I could do it to the left. I can do the back here by hitting 2. So you get the idea here. So then I press 5, and then it will start to fill them up and evenly distribute the shield HP. This is very useful if you're doing PvE and you're in like a Corsair or a Connie and you're taking on some kind of big target. You give 8 a tap, maybe just 1. That way you have just a little bit more power to your front shield. That way you can face tank something. This really only works in big ships, by the way, Connie and above. So size 3 shield generators and higher. And this is now the last part, which is the power. If you're a viewer of this channel, you might remember that I used to do a lot with the power settings. As the game has evolved, I have found myself messing with the power settings so infrequently that I could no longer really justify doing keybinds for them. I find that the default work fine, or simply using the MFD to add or remove things as necessary also works fine. The thing is that you eventually get power plants in this game that make it so that you're running full pips anyway, so it's not that big a deal. It's very much set it and forget it. So I don't really mess with the power stuff anymore. And that's pretty much it. This should be good again for the rest of the year. I've given explanations to a lot of the stuff that you should know. There simply are just a lot of settings in Star Citizen that you don't have to worry about. I would argue there's too much. Just endless bloat and needless complication. Lots of granular settings that you'll probably never touch or ever notice. If, however, there are things that I do notice throughout development and play as the year goes on, I will make a very specific video about that new feature, as opposed to just remaking this video from scratch. I hope you all enjoyed it. Leave comments down below, and thank you for watching.